So over this past summer of 2022, I led a project documenting the transitioning lives of three specific Ukraine citizens from Ukraine into Canada. These individuals were between the ages of 16 and 20, two of which attended my high school for a short period of time. Did you know that there are around 80 displaced Ukraine citizens just in Kamloops at the moment, and thousands more throughout the province, many of which have had to leave loved ones behind in Ukraine? The stories they have to tell are profound, moving, and deeply important for society to understand today. I only heard the stories from Ola, Ilya, and Yana, and my entire perspective on who these people were and what their lives were like completely flipped on its head. Now, here in North America, we often take for granted what it means to be safe. It is not until a conflict becomes a daily threat to our lives that we begin to question what it is we're really doing. For example, towards the beginning of the conflict, all of the major news outlets continuously reported on the war. Now, if something incredible or horrible happens, it will still be reported on, but the daily lives of those living within the conflict are not talked about much. Why is this? It's not as if it has gotten less important. It's because people no longer care, as they may not be directly affected. Among the multitude of questions asked during the interview, the most contradictory response was in regards to whether they considered themselves refugees. Now, going into the interview, I was interested in knowing how they perceived the title refugee, seeing as they come from a typically safe country and a luxurious lifestyle compared to the stereotype of Middle Eastern refugees. The younger group, who were brother and sister, stated that they fit the definition: a person who has been forced to leave their country to avoid war, persecution, or natural disaster. But there's so much more, and that title did not define them. The older interviewee, to my surprise, stated that no one from Ukraine was a refugee. They simply had to leave their home for a little while, but they would be back. Now, I didn't understand why they had such varying and passionate answers, and then I imagined for a moment what it would be like for myself to be called a refugee. When we hear the word refugee, we see crowded camps along borders with torn tents and trash displaced over the dirt ground. Children with mud on their faces and a permanent look of despair. Mothers desperate to find food to feed their malnourished children. We immediately pity them. We assume they have come from an awful way of life and are struggling daily just to survive. But why do we view them as so helpless and in need of our pity? In the off-camera conversations I had with these individuals, I learned how harmful this label was to them. It created tensions in relationships because, of course, people were going to be nicer to them. And that meant they had trouble making real connections. It meant being the center of attention in an unknown world as Canadian students offered condolences for experiences they couldn't understand. And teachers constantly made them relive the experience and share their stories. It meant never fitting in, always being different, an outsider. Nobody had intended to make them feel like that, but nonetheless, the damage was done. I had caused damage by doing this project and asking them to answer my questions, by assuming there would be no harm done in using a word in its correct definition. A heartbreaking story Ola, one of the younger interviewees, told me was about her immediate decline in mental health after being welcomed into our supposedly safe community. Now, I don't know if any of you have struggled with being the new kid on the block, but in my experience, it kind of sucks. I have attended 7 different schools in 12 years, and adjusting to a new schedule, school, and group of people is a trial unlike any other. However, in my experience, I spoke the same language, and I had all my friends in the same time zones, though I still had a support system to talk to. Ola did not. She had a slight grasp on the language, and no, people speaking louder did not help her understand. All her friends and all of her relatives were back in Ukraine. While she was going about her day in a foreign world, they were getting whatever rest they could. And while they were awake and alert, Ola was dreaming of being home. She had no one to talk to, no one to care for her. To her friends back in the conflict, she was the lucky one. And here, in her new home, she was given the title of the new kid, a title given to the newest mystery, a newest loner, the newest weirdo. How is the title refugee any different? Does it not inherently belittle whoever is labeled as such? Sure, these people have come here because it's safer here, but that's all it is, safer. There's still people who play instruments, enjoy reading, have favorite movies, play sports, and enjoy laughing with their friends. People who have accomplished incredible tasks, who aspire to become doctors, lawyers, CEOs, computer technicians, mailmen, engineers, mechanics. People who dream. People who love. Why only see the pain when there is so much joy that's made them who they are? Why limit their stories to only the bad when there is so much good that we could explore within them? Now, I didn't know that a word used correctly could cause so much harm. It is important to note that we have the word refugee for a reason, and it shouldn't be completely disregarded because there is some good that comes from the pity we are made to feel. All I am saying is that it's wrong to assume that every refugee lives in a tent, has a bunch of starving kids, and is constantly scared for their lives. The true convolution surrounding this word is difficult to think about because it forces us out of our comfort zones, making us think about people as full individuals, including all aspects that make them who they are. This is why it's important to break down the stigma behind the word, rather than to completely redefine it. We must be aware that the word refugee can still be empowering for someone who survived something that very few others could have, and who made it out alive. But there are also refugees who are very happy, do not require any pity at all. These are the people who are often ignored, but require just as much recognition as those who are outwardly suffering. By recognizing those who may fit the definition of a refugee, but don't feel like one, the goal is not to ignore the pain and suffering that others have gone through, but instead to recognize that they should have the slightest feeling of normalcy and comfort in our own foreign society. This starts by recognizing that people are just people, humans just like us. In the end, we are not all that different from each other, though we seem to have forgotten that. Thank you.